A step-by-step walkthrough to becoming a distributed generation installer process through the Illinois Commerce Commission. So there are a few ways that we have to follow here when we go through. So a little bit of a quick background. In the state of Illinois, in order to become a PV photovoltaic installer, there are a few ways of doing that. Now, every state has different means, and even certain geographic and county municipal locations have even greater requirements that may be offered or required by an installer for that region. So be very careful and be very knowledgeable on the location in which you plan on doing your PV installations. And this example that we're going to work through is specifically for PV, but any distributed energy installer in the state of Illinois will have to go through the Illinois Commerce Commission and go through this certification process. In order for you to become a certified PV installer in the state of Illinois, these are the following requirements that you're going to need. At least 5 installs that are documented, or a DOL registered apprenticeship program, so you'll have to submit that proof of completion there. Submit a proof of completion of either your NABCEP certified distributed generation technology certificate or the ETA required certification that is out there, as well as the UL Labs version. And then finally, the last way would be through an associate degree program that's been approved by the Illinois Community College Board. That gives you a number of ways to get into this program and into doing professional installs in the location. Now, there is some things you may need to be aware of, and that is an installer can install, but then you have to still follow the guidelines for the actual interconnection to the electrical grid system. So that will be an additional responsibility that you as the installer will need to pay attention to. This material is right here from the administration code, and there's a link there. Now that you have one or maybe more of those options to become a distributed generation installer, here is how you actually form and do the process to become that installer. The very first thing that you want to do is go to the Distributed Generation Installer Certification website. And I will pull that up here in just a minute. But if you click on that website, there will be a variety of menu links that will have a frequently asked questions. Is a very good document. It's a Word document to have open and minimized to help you answer some of those specific questions. The other most important thing to read through then is to open up the actual application itself and take a read through just the application. Just do a cursory look through there. Once you start this process, there are 2 ways to submit your application to the Illinois Commerce Commission. So here on out, we'll call Illinois Commerce Commission the ICC. ICC will most likely would like you to use the e-docket system. Now you can mail it, and I happen to mail mine, and I mailed mine to the chief clerk of the ICC there. But I also have an e-docket login, and I can update and upload documentation through the e-docket system. You have to set up an e-docket account prior to you using it. So there's a little bit of a legwork mechanism that needs to be done prior to you using it, but that's certainly a very feasible and easy to use process. So those are your 2 ways to submit your documentation. What do we need for the documentation and filling it out? The very first thing that you're going to need to do is, and this is the process that you just want to follow, and that is you first need to create a DG installer cover letter, and I've got the link right there to pulling up that. But if you go back to the DG installer's website, that link is right there as well. That's what we've got with that. You got to create a cover letter, you got to fill out the application, and then you got to submit an appendix, an exhibit, some attachment forms that recognizes that you have completed one of those entryways into the field. And then also open up the instructions. So let's just do a quick example and step our way through that, shall we? And I want to open up my Word documents that I've got, and I want to also show you what the website is, the certification website. And as you can see, there's the frequency asked questions, the certification, rules making. Here's the application forms, here's the actual form itself, and then the cover letter. So I have all of these done in one form that I submitted myself personally to become an installer. And that is going to be this Word document here. Now, for brevity's sake, I scanned it just to show you. So when you submit your cover letter, and you do this application, you're going to need to create two almost near identical copies of this. The reason for this is on the public eDocket system, there will be this cover letter and application that is viewable to everyone in the world. Now, when you submit this to ICC, they're going to need to know what your tax ID number is, and they're also going to need to know possibly your Social Security number, depending if you're going to apply as an individual or if you're going for an organization. We're going to create a cover letter, a application form, and then some of those appendixes, or at the very end, some of those certificates and attachments that we're going to need to do. We're going to call those exhibits, and Exhibit B is going to be this second copy of the application cover letter that includes your Social Security number or tax ID number. All right, just so you're aware of that. Just to hit this quickly again, this is your first avenue of the gateway to learning where all logistics, paperwork, and all the submission information is at. This is the application form. That application form, along with the cover letter, will look like this. Let's head back to my PowerPoint. So once we have that, this is the very first page of the entire paperwork submission. You're going to have a public version and this Exhibit B confidential. So I've highlighted Exhibit B in red. Notice there is no difference between the two, other than anywhere you see gray on your application, you fill in the information that's required. If there is some sort of information that needs to be hidden, what you do is you put in quotation marks, leave it blank, or XXX, and then you say applicant's response is provided in confidential Exhibit B. So this way, this is the public version. The private version that will only reside within the Illinois Commerce Commission will have your tax exempt ID, your tax ID, or your Social Security number. So now this is the cover letter. Page 1 is actually the application, and again it's identical until you get down to this bottom part 3, and I did not fit my tax ID number or my Social Security number on page 3, so I put it onto page 2. And again, anytime you deal with the public side, notice there is a blank with quotation marks and see confidential Exhibit B. This is the verbiage that they'd like to see. On the private side, you put your Social Security number. So you follow the rules, and then at the very end, you put respectively submitted, you put your signature, and that's the same as well. You get to the verification form. Now, the verification form is a standard form that is going to be notarized by a notary public that will state that this is how it reads. Now, when you go to the ICC webpage and you see what the template looks like, there's a few things that you want to kind of verbally think through your mind as you write this out. But basically, you want to put your first name, last name, and then you write this following sentence into the most clear, succinct form that represents you either as an individual, which this application shows, as an organization, or as a group of folks that are applying. Most of the time, if not all the time, as an individual, this is how you're going to fill it out. I do not have a form, I've not seen a form where it's come through as an organization. If you go to the Illinois Commerce Commission's eDockets and then do a couple searches, you probably will be able to find that. I don't know where that's at right now, but I suspect that it does indeed exist. This is what it should look like if you're doing an individual installer in this application. Again, there's no difference between the public and the private version. Exhibit A, which in this case will be the 5th page into the application, this is going to be a single identical page between the public and the private. Now, I submitted mine and I made a mistake. And here's the mistake that I made. When I first did mine, I just did an affidavit saying that I had completed 5 installs of a photovoltaic system, and I did not include the location or the date at which those were performed. The Illinois Commerce Commission, Sanjo, who works in this division, called me up and explained to me that I needed to do a revision. When you do a revision, you need to resubmit it. In this case, it was Exhibit A, and then you put amended behind it to let them know that this is the newer document that would follow in. So I made the mistake of not doing that. I resubmitted it to show this. If I had done it correctly the first time, this is what it should look like. And this would be identical to both the Exhibit B side and to that public version side. So that will be just an FYI for you to know. What if you don't have your 5 installs? What if you are a NABCEB certified or an ETA certified folk? What you would do is you would still do an Exhibit A, but you would put a copy of what transcripts you have, the associate's degree, if you got your associate's degree in this field, or your copy of your DOL apprenticeship paperwork or the certifications through the accredited bodies that are providing that. You still need it notarized and it still needs to be there, but this is referenced back in the instructions from their website, which is linked here. The last piece of paper that you need to have is this Exhibit B. And Exhibit B is just a cover page that would say Confidential Exhibit B. Then on there you just put that it's Section 3 and the cover letter that would include the tax ID number or your social security number. Those would be listed there. So that's what you do there. So what we're really doing is we're creating a public copy that will be referenced in the e-dockets, and we're creating the same exact forms and cover letter, verification, application with our social security numbers on there, and then we're going to put that under this Exhibit B that's behind her. That does not go to public. They've gone to great lengths to try to explain that, and that's what we're seeing here. We've got that. What do we do now? How do we submit this thing? So let's go over this one more time. You take your application, the verification, Exhibit A, then you put your Exhibit B cover letter, and then that same application with the Social Security tax ID number, your verification, and Exhibit A with that tax ID number or anything else that may not be shown in public. Now, you can obviously tell that my address and telephone number are listed, so there's still going to be some public information out there. That's the way this process works. So what you need to do is place them all into that arrangement. You submit a check of $50 for the application fee, and you make it out to the Illinois Commerce Commission. You use the e-docket system to submit that material, or you can just mail it to that address that we had listed in the first couple of PowerPoints here. Once that gets submitted, you will receive a phone call or an email saying that you've done things right, or in my case, I did something wrong, and I was asked to make an amendment to it and then resubmit. So I will say the Illinois Commerce Commission worked really well and really good with us to make this a pretty quick process through. What will you get in return? You will get an email in return, and most likely right now Sanjo is working at the ICC and he is overseeing these applications. He will do that application, and then you will get this verification. You will get two big things. The first big thing is you're going to get a docket which will have all of the application and materials in it, and this docket is going to be important for you. You're going to want to remember that docket number right there, 13-0641. That is my personal docket that will be associated with me as a PV installer. The second equally critical thing is there will be a date and a time set up for you to have a verification. Now, what this verification is going to do for us, and I'll show you on the next slide, is going to just discuss any questions, problems, and materials that are in this docket and application that you've submitted. As well as what the ICC will give to you, besides those two things, is a notice of filing. So this has been filed and it's been entered into their system. And then there's a verification that Sanjo has witnessed this, or the ICC staff member has verified that everything has been correctly entered in. So let's talk about those final steps then. So just a few moments ago we talked about this time that you may need to speak a part of this application, that you're going to go before a judge for a hearing. This hearing is waivable. In my personal case, I waived my right to attend this hearing. The good news is the hearing is just there to answer any potential questions. If everything goes according to plan and you've done everything correctly, there will not be an issue. So I was able to talk to Sanjo, the staff member, and they said, here's what's going to happen. They're going to have a judge with a court reporter taking notes. The judge reviews this docket with your application, all the materials in it, verifies that everything looks good. By the time it makes it to the judge, everything is good, will be answered. There should be very little problems. The judge then will recognize either the individual, the employee, or the company, And at that point, the system is pretty well done. The process is just about done. And what happens then is the DG installer has been approved. The ICC will put an order into your docket. So your docket number is in essence the actual location where your order that shows you being a DG installer is at. So when you do a bid on an install, you can reference that you are credited through this Illinois Commerce Commission, and then you can reference your docket number. There will not be a certificate mailed to you. It will just be a single docket number that then has an order inside of there that shows that you have been accredited. So there are a few other additional rules. Any installs that you do perform now, you will have to maintain records on for about 3 years. Well, obviously, if you're in the business of doing solar installations, you're going to have copies of those receipts, the installation, your labor, the hours. So that is going to be a pretty much already done process, but you will need to keep that data on hand. So this ICC docket number is yours. That's the most important thing when you go to do bids. That's what you would say that I am a certified DG installer in PV. And as a last little note, in order to be a DG installer, you need to tell them what specific distributed energy installer you wish to be. In my case, it's for photovoltaic. Maybe it may be for wind. It may be for whatever other opportunities may come our way. But this is the process that needs to happen and go through. If you run into any problems, Sanjo is there to help. I will say this, they were really pretty good. Does it make a lot of sense? Can it be confusing at times? Yes, that's the way life works. But I will say they work pretty well with me getting this to go. And so just call and email. Just say, I don't quite understand this. Can you help me through? And they will be more than happy to help you. So unfortunately, this ended up being a 20-minute discussion on how to do it. But there you go. Thanks a lot.